Hello guys, my name is Colin and this is Colin Talks Crypto. We've been talking about the Bitcoin bull run recently, and this is part 2 of when to sell. I also created a Colin Talks Crypto Bitcoin bull run index, a figure that shows where I feel we are on this cycle. And I'm going to break down a bunch of different charts and metrics to answer the question that you're all wondering, which is when is the peak and when do I sell? Please do not buy or sell or trade any Bitcoin or any cryptocurrencies or make any financial decisions based on the content of this video. This is for educational purposes only. All right, guys, so right now the Colin Talks Crypto Bitcoin Bull Run Index is at 59. That's 59 out of 100. As we get closer to 100, that will mean we are closer to the actual peak. And this figure is derived from a bunch of different metrics, as you can see down here. And these metrics are averaged into this index score. And I will show you exactly how I derived each one of these scores, and we're going to look at each one of these charts. This Bitcoin Bull Run Index is an indicator based on a portfolio of these metrics down here. So when you take all of these together and you average them, you will get 59 as the Colin Talks Crypto Bitcoin Bull Run Index. And I'm going to be using this as a way to answer people's questions of how close are we? When are we at the top? How do we know? Because as you saw in that last animation I did, the time-lapse animation, you can see that we look like we have a very, very long time to go. But like I said, when the bull run gets going vertical, it really is indistinguishable from any other vertical part. You always look like you're going vertical at a certain stage of the bull run, but you could only be halfway up and it looks like it's going vertical. So how do we know we're at the peak? And that's what these metrics are here to show us. They're here to help us understand when we're actually at the peak versus when we look like we're at the peak, but we're not really, because we have some metrics that are still outstanding as far as topping out or indicating that we're at the top. So I hope you find this useful. I put a lot of energy, a lot of effort into making this, and this number 59 right here is not a percentage. Some of these metrics down below are based on logarithmic charts and some on linear charts, hence why it cannot be used as a straight percentage. So don't go multiplying this time the price and think that you reached the top. This is just a metric indicator used to look at when we are approaching that bull run peak. So we're going to take a look at the animation that I made. This is a 2013 to 2017 bull run animated time lapse. And it shows the largest pullbacks on the way up to the bull run peak, as well as where we are indicated by that red dot. And we went over this a couple videos ago, but I just want to play this again for a refresher. And you can see how low that red dot is in comparison to where the actual peak is. How ridiculously far we may have to go if this was last bull run. And each bull run may vary. We may have less, we may have more to go, but that gives you an idea of, even though we've come so far, how far we could have to go. Now let's dive back into this metric and let's take a look at each one of these charts that makes up that score, and let's break it down. So first of all, we have the golden 51 to 49% ratio. And this chart shows that from every bottom of the price cycle, indicated by these green arrows, to the halving makes up 51% of that bull run, and that the remaining 49% can determine where the next peak will be. And so we are currently in this second green box of this cycle right here. And I'm using this as one of the metrics for the Colin Talks Crypto Bitcoin Bull Run Indicator. And you can see how I derive it. I take the point from the bottom of the bull run to the end of not only the 51% box, but also the 49% box added to it, which would give us the anticipated end of the bull run. We are here with this little blue dot, and so all we do is divide the distance we've gone into the total anticipated distance, and we come out with a percentage. And so for this metric, the percentage I got was 74%. This distance that we've traveled so far right here is 74% of the remaining total distance to the peak. So this is one metric. The next metric is the Bitcoin search term with Google Trends. And as the bull run goes on and the media hypes this and people FOMO and people start pumping into Bitcoin, there is a rather sudden surge toward the end of the bull run, especially at the end, but a little bit preceding it as well, which indicates that we are approaching the top. The way I'm recording this particular metric as a part of my index is I noted that in the prior bull run, which right here is $20,000, so the peak 2 bull runs ago was about 12.5% of the peak that we had seen in December of 2017. And so this green line kind of shows where we might be headed in the near future on this trend chart. And so the way we do this calculation is we take where we are now, which is currently 25%, but it's 25% of the last bull run. And we need to see how much of the upcoming bull run we're going to be. So what we're going to do is we're going to take 25% of the 12.5% that this peak will become of the new all-time high. I know it's a little complicated. I hope I explained that okay. But basically this figure right here will become something like this or here. And we want to know what this is in relation to the new peak. We haven't hit that new peak yet. And when we do, it'll push this chart down. And to get where it will be in relation to the next peak, we take 25% of 12.5%, and we get 3.125%. And so that is where we are. 3% right here, rounded down to the nearest digit, gives us that metric. And I just thought this was interesting. I zoomed in right here on the peak of the Google search trend term for Bitcoin, and actually it's made up of two peaks. And you can see that 8 days prior to the actual bull run peak, right here, December 15th, 2017, nearly $20,000, that's when this occurred. 8 days before that, we saw a Google Trends peak, and 7 days after that, we saw a Google Trends peak. So I would say this is a fairly reliable metric to know when we are very, very close to the top. It peaked twice surrounding the actual price peak. So when we see that first one, we know that we're getting close. All right, and moving on to the next metric, this is Plan B's stock to flow chart. And so here's how I broke down this metric when I'm counting it as part of my index of how close we are to that next bull run peak. So you can see that there's a blue line here, and there's an overshoot period right here between the actual peak of the bull run and when that blue line plateaus at a new level. And here's the plateau, but we're going to take that overshoot period equidistant from the last bull run. We're going to assume it's going to follow a similar delay. And basically, how far are we right here, this last orange dot, in relation to the end of this blue line? And so again, it's just a percentage. I divide the distance from the left blue line to the orange dot and divide that into the total length of this entire blue line. And the distance that I get for that was 79%. So we're currently 79% of the way horizontally over to this next bull run peak per the stock to flow chart from Plan B. Next up, we have two others. This is my personal proportions chart that I did. I use this as part of the metric here, but notice it's just 2 points of the total 9 different metrics that we're using. And so we take a look at both the timing and the price of my last proportions video. And you'd have to go back to this video right here. This is the Bitcoin bull run peak, December of 2021 video, where I predict a price of $211,000 by December of 2021. So right now we have 12 months approximately until this particular prediction was made. All right, and this is kind of funny. I've got a picture and a picture and a picture right now. I've got me 3 times on your screen. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in on this particular chart right now, and we're going to talk about that for a second. You can see that I predicted a $211,000 Bitcoin price. That would be a 64x increase, which is basically, it's actually the proportionate rise based on the current length of the bull run cycle. And as I said, there are 2 metrics we're using from my proportions prediction, the timing and the price. So we'll start with the timing. We know that the anticipated distance between the 2 bull run peaks is 1,461 days. And we know that so far we've progressed 1,115 days through the current bull run. So we do another percentage and we determine that we are 76.3% of the way through the current bull run. So that's where we get this 76%. Likewise, for the price prediction, and you can watch the video again if you want to, $211,000 was the Bitcoin price prediction, again, based on those proportions in that video. And so right now, based on where we are, $33 some odd thousand for Bitcoin divided into $211,000 gives you the 15% that you see here. So it's interesting to see how much we deviate in terms of the price versus the timing. But that makes sense because the price is going to exponentially increase as we get toward the end of the bull run. The bull run accelerates vertically as we get toward the end, and the timing is linear. We're going to progress moment by moment toward the end of that goal. So the timing is going to be a different number than the price. So expect the price to catch up dramatically toward the end of the bull run. Okay, next up we have the Bitcoin investor tool, the 2-year moving average. So let's take a look at that chart. So here's the 2-year moving average multiplier. The green line is the moving average, the average of the price over the past 2 years drawn as a curve. And then that line is multiplied times 5 to create a channel. And historically, anytime the price of Bitcoin has been below the green line in these shaded green areas, this historically has been a very good time to buy Bitcoin. And likewise, anytime the Bitcoin price has been above this red line and showing in these shaded red areas, that has been a very good time to sell Bitcoin historically. Now you'll notice that actually the peaks tend to go a considerable distance above that red line. And so to make this a little more accurate, I'm going to assume a 10% increase above that red line for where we should be selling our Bitcoin, and a 10% decrease below that green line for where we should buy Bitcoin in the future bear market. But we're not there yet, so let's focus on this top red line. So I zoomed in for you just to make it easier to see. So the distance between this orange dot and this red line is that 10% increase that I told you about. And likewise, I took a 10% decrease below this bottom channel line, this green line, down to this other orange dot. And basically, I'm calculating where we are between both the upper end with the 10% increase added and the lower end with the 10% decrease added. And so where we are is right here, which is 66% of the way up to where I would like to see us before I consider that a likely and probable bull run peak. So 66% is the metric that we got for the Bitcoin investor tool 2-year moving average. Okay, the next one is the Trololo trend line with Mark DeMessel's percentage change chart, because I really like how he broke this down. And so there's a couple ways of visualizing this. I'm going to use this one because I actually am going to go for this bottom graph where it shows the percentage deviation from the red line median, which is a curve through the average of the price over the entire Bitcoin bull run. And I noticed that there is a bit of a trend occurring with the peaks on this lower chart, so I drew a green line through that. So I did observe that the peaks are decreasing, and I drew a green trend line through that so that we're a little more accurate as far as where we might peak out. And I think that that reason is possibly because of the halving event reducing the supply in half every time, every 4 years. A half of a half of a half is less than just a half of a half, and so on. Every half is increasingly less than before. So I think that's decreasing the volatility of Bitcoin itself. And you'll see this trend of a decreasing peaks in quite a few charts that I'm going to show you. So it's not the only chart that has that phenomenon. So basically what I did on the Trololo trend line is I took the bottom line right here, the bottom of the bear market, where we are today and where we will be around the end of December 2021. The line isn't very steep here, so it's fairly accurate, even if we're off by a few months in either direction. And I determined that what our percentage is from the bottom all the way up to this peak is 45%. So we're currently 45% of the way up to the peak of this Trololo line trend chart as far as the deviation from that median price. Okay, the next one, the second to last, is the NUPL chart. Show me your NUPLs. And again, you'll see a decreasing trend line, not quite as steep, but still decreasing nonetheless, of the peaks here, of these blue price peaks. And I wanted to account for that, so I extended that all the way out. And also you can see I drew a trend line through most of the bottoms of the NUPL chart as well, and extended that to the 2021 trend line. And you can see that where we are right now, it's a little small and hard to see, but we're about 94.4% from this point right here to this point right here. And that's how I came to this figure. And the NUPL chart is an interesting one because it exaggerates the bear market lows, and the peaks, these little blue peaks, really are very condensed, and you don't get a lot of time spent there, which I think is a pro as well as a con. It's a con because it's hard to see it, but it's a pro because when you're finally in that blue range, there's not too much ambiguity about whether you're at the top or not. If you're in this blue range, you basically should be selling, at least historically per this chart here. So that's what I'm taking a look at. And so 94.4% for the NUPL chart. And this is probably as good a place as any to just add a preface that all of this is just based on other people's metrics being averaged into an index number right here. All of this doesn't necessarily mean it's going to play out this way. I'm just doing my best to average the risk of metrics being incorrect over a greater number than just looking at one chart alone. And I think that's the advantage of this particular method. Okay, and the last chart is the PL multiple, and there's a whole article on it if you want to read it. I'm not going to go into it in too much detail, but basically historically every time we've seen it go into this red zone, it's been a good time to sell and take profits. Again, you'll notice a decreasing trend line of the tops on this PL multiple. So I drew a line through that so that we're following that pattern and we're not ignoring it. So basically, we're 74.2% of the way between the bottoms, of which I also drew a trend line, and the top trend line, and where we are now, 74.2% of the way up. So that is the PL multiple metric. And we're going to end off by playing that animation one more time. This is the animated Bitcoin bull run animation. As I point out in this video, some of the corrections are as big as the previous entire bull run, but I want to pay special attention to the last one because it's literally the size of like 5 previous bull runs put together, which is really insane. So get ready for a wild ride, guys. Thank you for joining me as always. Please share this with your friends and please like this. If you like it, it gives YouTube a chance to share this with another group of people outside my normal subscriber base. And I would love to reach new people and share this information with them so we can all be educated on the bull run and all ride it together. Have a great day and I'll talk to you again soon. Testing. The big beefy beaver ate buffalo wings with barbecue sauce.